What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're taking a look at LEGO Star Wars: A Skywalker Saga here in this video for Steam Deck. It's a game I played through on Xbox and recently got on Steam, so I figured the deck's going to be a great way to play through again. So let's check out some performance, starting with what our settings are here. So we've got 800p. There's not a lot of options in here. Shadow quality, anti-aliasing, ambient occlusion, screen space reflections. I've got everything maxed out for now, just as we jump in. And for the first 3 missions you can choose from, this is the most crushing one right here. So I jumped into this spot. Maxing out this game on the deck, even for a 30 FPS cap, really isn't going to work out, so I'm not going to use that setting a lot, but we are going to go over quite a few things here. Now, if I take everything down to their lowest, except for the anti-aliasing, and I leave the image sharpening on, because I don't get much performance boost from turning those off or down, and the image looks much better, we only gain, about 10 FPS here, so definitely a lot more playable, and there is a difference between maxing it out and going pretty much all the way to the low point without bringing any resolution down, of about 10 FPS in this particular area, which happens to be kind of a difficult area to run out of the first 3 missions you can start with. So it's just kind of a good example of what you're looking at when it comes to performance in certain areas. Of course, there's going to be other areas that you can actually just get yourself right up to 60 FPS or close, and this is just really all going to depend on where you're at and what missions you're on. Now, if we go down here and kind of use a combination of medium and high, just to check that out, we get into a little bit of combat in another level here. It acts very similar to where we were just at. Maybe not quite as hard to run here, but you're still going to be all over with the FPS, and getting yourself a 40 FPS cap here in this area with these settings may be possible, but not everywhere. So I'll show you some examples of that as well going forward. And if we want to go in here and change our settings, which we'll do in just a second in the same spot, over to all low, we will get a bit of an increase off the bat with our FPS, but when we get back over to that same area that was kind of tanking before with the enemies, even with the enemies gone, it will go back down. And there's a lot of areas of the game that do that. So you'll see here all the way back down to 42 from 60, very sporadic depending on where you're at. Now here's the settings I'm using mostly. These are kind of like my recommended medium and low settings here that pretty much for the most part I'm using for my playthrough now, and it gets me a decent variable refresh rate or a 30 FPS cap, which I'll show later. But no matter what, you're going to get these dip areas, even on ships where you're not outside rendering it like as much draw distance and stuff. You're just going to get these big dips that go down into the 40s and then back up to the 50s and 60s. Now, if I go ahead and max everything back out again here just to take a look, I thought this area was interesting to show you some of the things I've been talking about. 40 FPS was working great here until I mounted up, and then everything just kind of lost it here on the highest settings. I just found that interesting. Another area of the game that has some really weird sporadic FPS, so don't drive yourself crazy just trying to lock it down all the time, because it is quite difficult. Now, if I go back in here and change things to more what my recommended settings are here to see what it does in the same area. It reacts similarly, but it doesn't quite tank the FPS as much as it was. So there is a difference with the settings there, but it still does fall and have trouble in this area, and there are a lot of spots like that in the game. Now, sticking with those recommended settings I'm using here, if I go ahead and do a 30 FPS cap, going all the way back to this mission that was a bit crushing we were talking about in the beginning of the video, I'm able to pretty much maintain 30 FPS here, and in any of the levels I've tried with these settings, works pretty well. So if you want to cap the game and not have it move around on you at all, you're pretty much going to have to go with 30 FPS no matter what settings you're wanting to mess around with. The very lowest settings won't get you a locked 40 all the time. But if you want to go with lock 40 and get it some of the time, you'll be able to do that, or run variable refresh. So all depending on how you want to run the game, I think this video will give you a pretty decent idea of what to expect and what to adjust for the way that you want to play. But anyways, guys, thanks a lot for coming and check out the video as always, and I'll see you in the next one.